Hi, everyone. Good to see you. It was weird driving back through everything and just like, oh, not much has changed, but some things have, and that's good. So, get settled here. So before I share the message this morning, just wanted to give you a little bit of an update. I'm glad Glenn read that text from Doc. He really, really wanted to be here to see you guys. The last time he was here, I think, was 2018. So I'm going to try to catch you up with everything that's happened at Meadowhaven since then. So back in 2019, through the wonderful support of donors and friends of Meadowhaven, all the big projects, Meadowhaven was completely debt-free. And so it was awesome to have that, and everyone was all staffed up, and there were a few dream projects that they were getting ready to work on, and then 2020 happened. So all of those kind of got pushed to the side. So in 2020, Meadowhaven was receiving about a six-figure income, and we completely lost all of that. So, but again, thankful for donors who saw the need and helped us keep all of us staff paid. It was really thankful for that, and then the PPP loans really helped out too. So we did not have to lay anyone off, and that was a huge blessing in and of itself. And so, yeah, if you all will remember, so I left in March of 2020, which is when all of that happened. So I was planning to do a job that I didn't get to do any of that. So we got really creative with how Meadowhaven could interact with people, even though you couldn't come and see us. So it was definitely frustrating at times, but also just really cool to see the different ways that you can serve people. So we got onto our social medias again. So for those of you who follow and comment and like things, it's good to see your name pop up every once in a while. And what was really cool about 2020 at Meadowhaven for me was just how you could see the wildlife of Meadowhaven kind of come alive again, because they had been so used to people being in these areas, and so they just kept away from them. But like there were deer that came up pretty much to my office window, and it was just really cool to see nature get to be around itself instead of being ushered off because people were there. So it was really fun to just watch the land kind of take a breath, because ever since 1958, well, really before that, Meadowhaven has always been used, and so the land kind of got a sabbatical, which was kind of nice to watch and just see how it could grow and heal from the constant use. So that was 2020. And then in 2021, we kind of got moving a little bit again, and we're still recovering some of the projects and some of the losses from the last year. But we got to run summer camp, which was awesome, and we had a very small staff of 10 people. Usually to run summer camp, we need 20 people. So everyone was troopers, and they just worked so hard. And it was awesome to see the way that they just grew together to serve the kids, the campers that we got to see. So that was really fun. But we also have lost 2 team members, lost in the sense of one retired and one found a job closer to home, so that he could be around his nieces and nephews and his family. So we love them. We're glad that that was the next right thing for them. But us full-time staff left, which is 3 of us and then a half-time staff, are covering those positions until we get those filled. So I will ask you to please pray for those positions to be filled soon, so we can be back up to strength and just get to do all the wonderful things that we get to do at Meadowhaven again. And now from here I am headed out to Virginia, Ohio, Indiana, Kansas, and Missouri to recruit college kids for summer staff. So be praying for that as well, that I can get some summer staff again. But two specific volunteer stories I wanted to share with you this morning, just an example of how much we love and cherish and are just super thankful for our volunteers that come. So we have one volunteer that comes pretty regularly, but he came to Spring Workday, and he saw that we had every 3-ish years, the service road from Lakeview Lodge to the activity center gets flooded. And so there was a lot of erosion that was happening. And so this guy saw a problem and he was like, well, I can help you fix that. And so he got all the materials together, he got the manpower together, and they are now fixing that. And it's just really helpful, especially in this time where we're kind of low on staff, that a volunteer sees a need, asks if this is a way that they can bless Menno Haven, and just does it. And it's just, we have tons of volunteers that are like that, and we're just so thankful for them for that. And then we also have a volunteer that really loves to ride his motorcycle. So it gives him an excuse to come to Menno Haven once or twice a week and ride his bike out to us. And he's just like, I don't know, I'm coming, give me something to do. And just his servant heart and the way that our donors and our volunteers care for Menno Haven is just such a gift, and we're so thankful for that. So if you do want more of a Menno Haven update, I brought my recruiting thing so you can see a few updated pictures of summer camp and just life at camp. And then you can always follow us on social medias too to watch those things. So I know some of you are wondering, so an update on me is there's not really much to update you on. I am at Menno Haven. I am still in a master's program at Lincoln Christian Seminary. One thing that I really loved about COVID was that I had a lot more time to spend with my family, and I figured out that I actually like them. Like, you love your family, but like, I actually like them. And so, also, my brothers found great wives, so I'm really thankful for that. And it's just awesome to just kind of reconnect with them and realize that sometimes your family are your best friends. And so that's just been really fun. But I also have a puppy, so that is something new that I didn't have while I was here. But that whole situation was a part of this year. So I felt like this whole year God has been inviting me to look for joy even in the midst of everything else going on and amongst a lot of grief work. So some of you know because you saw my social media post, but I had my first pup that I adopted in January of this year. I dropped him off at my vet who also had boarding facility, and I got a call about 4 hours later, right when I was on 70, like in the middle of St. Louis, so like the most awful time to get a phone call. But I got a phone call that he had been attacked and that he had passed away by a bigger dog that was in the facility. So there was a lot of grieving, and I'm still grieving from that. So that happening in a year that I'm supposed to be looking for joy, that's really difficult. But now, that was Cooper, and now I have Charlie, which is his brother. There were about 15 puppies that were rescued together. And so Charlie actually had a broken leg, and no one else really wanted him. So we've been healing together, and it's really nice to just see that different side of things. But PTSD is definitely sneaky. So yeah, even on this trip, I'm a little shaky because he's at the border right now until my sister picks him up on Monday. So it's gonna be fine, but things happen. But yeah, I did have these whispers of fear of like, what if every dog you have that happens to? Like, what if that is your legacy that you leave behind? Obviously, I knew better than to entertain that thought too long, but it did get me thinking about the narrative of what we're leaving behind. And then my grandma passed away in May, and that was my last grandparent to pass away. So it's been a weird year of looking for joy while grieving. It's definitely a weird time to do it, but There were still good things and joyful things that happened in COVID. I got my best friend married off and officiated my brother's wedding, which was my first wedding. And I kind of love that my first wedding that I officiated was a beautiful story of second chances. They are both divorced, and they both found healing and redemption in their love story. And so that's always good to see, too. So there's always joy amongst grief. And that's kind of what this sermon, this message has kind of brought to the forefront for me. But yeah, so I said this past summer was interesting. We were short-staffed. We were constantly running around. But there were a lot of secrets that were shared with me this summer. And a lot of it was stories of pain that had happened before. And I had a few kids whisper, like, "You want to know a secret?" I'm like, I don't know if I need to know any more secrets. But I'm thankful that I can be a safe space for them. But I got this gift whispered to me a few times, and sometimes it was as simple as, "I like this rock." Great, awesome. But those simple communications were some of my favorite conversations. But even the ones that held difficult memories of family history, because knowing where you come from isn't always a happy story. And that heritage can be heavy to hold. And so reading this psalm, but also thinking about heritage, I looked up the definition, because that's what you do. I Googled it. And it says that it's a property that descends to an heir, something transmitted by or acquired from a predecessor, and or something possessed as a result of one's natural situation or birth. What is clear, though, even though there's some differing things, is that it's something passed down from generation to generation. So I looked at what is the trend that the current generation is experiencing. Now, this is just don't shoot the messenger. But it says that the biggest trend that is being passed down from generations started with the baby boomers, and it's handed down to the current generation, which is Generation Alpha. The next one in 2025 is Beta, so we better watch out for all the kids born in 2025. But baby boomers started this trend of discontentment, boredom, and restlessness, short attention spans, constant need for excitement and adrenaline rushes, and 24-hour entertainment, which kind of makes sense as to why now some professional athletes who entertain us are paid more than our teachers who instruct us. So I think that makes sense. But why do I bring this up? Because I believe, after reading the Bible, that discontentment is a gift that's been passed down from generations pretty much since the beginning. But the author of this psalm, David, inherited some of those habits from his family, who were the Israelites in the wilderness. And knowing that this is a multiple generational problem, we can turn to this psalm for some insight on this. So this psalm, Psalm 16, we don't know exactly when David wrote it, but we do know that David wrote it. And in the Hebrew text, it's called a mecham, which could be golden. So maybe he wrote it in the golden hour of the day, or maybe just a meditation or a prayer that he kept coming back to. So I know some of you enjoy the King James Version of the Bible, but I'm going to read the Hebrew to English direct translation. So it's a little bit of broken English, but I kind of like it. So I'm going to read that first. Preserve me, O God, for in thee do I put my trust. Thou hast said unto the Lord, thou art my Lord, my goodness. To the saints in the earth that enjoy the excellent, in whom is all my delight. Shall be multiplied their sorrows, another hasten will I not offer. Their drink offerings of blood take up their names into my lips. The Lord the portion of mine inheritance, and of my cup. Thou maintainest my lot. The lines are fallen unto me in pleasant heritage. Yea, I have a goodly. I will bless the Lord who hath given me counsel. Me in the night seasons also instructs my reins. I have set the Lord before me because he is at my right hand, and I shall not be moved. In glad, therefore, my heart rejoiceth, and my glory, my flesh, also shall rest in hope. For thou wilt not leave my soul in hell, neither wilt thou suffer thine Holy One to see corruption. Thou wilt shew me the path of life, fullness of joy, in thy present pleasures at thy right hand forevermore. So in summary, this is saying that the secret of contentment and great gladness in pressing times is God. Not what God gives us or what he provides for us. That's just stuff. But it is God. So I mentioned the wilderness generation. This is what David inherited these traits from. So we're going to start with them. Do you guys know that they didn't have to be? That wasn't God's original plan to leave them in the desert for 40 years. He originally only kept them in there for 2 years. So at 2 years, they were kind of getting ready to enter the promised land. And so they sent 12 surveyors to the land to check it out, see what they were going into, what they needed to kind of prepare themselves for. But when they came back, the report made the Israelites refuse to enter the promised land because 10 of the 12 surveyors came back and told the others that the people living there were powerful and the people group is large, and they believed they were fortified and that there were giants living in the land. So Caleb and Joshua were 2 of these surveyors, and they did not agree with the other 10. They tried to reverse this report because they believed that God was bigger than their fear of those people. But it didn't work. Israelites went with the majority vote, and so they spent 38 more years in the wilderness. So that reported strength of the enemy engendered fear into the Israelites. And the Israelites' faith in the Lord collapsed because of it. They became depressed and disgruntled, complaining that God had brought them this far only to kill them. They let their decisions be fear-driven. So once again, only Moses' intervention prevents God from destroying them all. And God stays his hand, but vows that none of this unbelieving generation will enter the promised land. So they spent the extra 38 years in the wilderness because of the fear. In their defense, we know with hindsight that God can beat giants, and David knew this too because he lived it. But while they were in the wilderness, there were 3 threats to their lives. There was very little water. There was no fertile land to grow any type of grain. And there were wild creatures. The only ones we know of were lions, wolves, venomous snakes, and scorpions. I don't want to be in a place with them, but... So why did God keep them there for so long? In Deuteronomy, a little bit before what I had them read this morning, tells us why. It says that God had them there to humble and test them in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would be able to keep his commandments. So the question that I pose to us is, are you honest with yourself about what you've allowed into your heart? Because that's what God is looking at. There's also a verse in there, verse 4, that says their clothes didn't wear out and their feet didn't blister the entire 40 years that they were in there. I have a hard time believing that because I have a 2-year-old shoe and it's already worn out, but whatever. Anyways, that's a sidebar. So back to, we'll stop here because the point of this is when we are discontent and full of sorrow and poor me attitude, we miss the heritage we are actually meant to inherit. So I like breaking it down verse by verse, so we're going to do that quick because there's a lot of rich fruit in every single one of these verses. So verse 1, keep me safe, O God, for I have come to you for refuge. So it begins with this petition for protection by God. And notice it says keep, means that God already had kept him safe. He was already in safety, but keep me there. David had this quiet confidence that to trust in the Lord is the totality of life. And this psalm is a powerful witness to faith in God. Choosing the Lord and rejecting all other gods is not a new problem. Every day we are tempted to choose something over God. And so ask yourself, what have you chosen today over your loyalty to God? That's why I always remind myself of the screw tape letters, because one of the things that one of the devils says was, you don't have to make them mess up big, just do tiny things every single day, and you'll eventually point them in a different direction. And I think that's where we have to be careful. So verse 2, I said to the Lord, you are my master. Every good thing I have comes from you. So if there is any goodness in me, it is the Lord. He's joyfully confessing that God is the absorbing passion of his life, and that pure joy is deeply needed today. It's a good thing that speaks good things to our souls. And Psalms has always done that for me, so I really love it. And Shane and Shane are worship leaders out of Texas, and they actually just released a psalm hymn. And back in 2015, they actually wrote a song based on this Psalm 16. So if you look it up, Psalm 16, Fullness of Joy, on YouTube or wherever you listen to music, I definitely tell you to check that out. They do a good job. Verse 3, the godly people in the land are my true heroes. I take pleasure in them. So this third verse is saying, to love God is to love his people. And Christians can be kind of negative on each other. They are unable to see the goodness or delight in others sometimes. And we're all flawed, but we were each made in his image, so I believe that there is a piece of his goodness in everyone. Some reflect it better than others, though. So we're supposed to take pleasure in other believers, even if their casserole of faith has different instructions on what goes in where. Do you love other Christians? Do you seek their company? For me, other Christians are the ones that remind me to choose joy over fear. And those are the ones who speak truth to me when all I hear are whispered lies. Verse 4 gets a little confusing. Troubles multiply for those who chase after other gods. I will not take part in their sacrifices of blood or even speak the names of their gods. This one gets a little confused because the pagan sacrifices which he's talking about included drinking the blood of animals. And some people think that was drinking the blood of humans, so they're against blood transfusions. But this is speaking specifically to we are not supposed to ingest blood of animals. But the main reason David is using this verse is to point out that idolatry inevitably brings a train of sorrows into the lives of its devotees. No matter how cool it looks, it's just not worth it. When will we learn this lesson? And then 5 and 6, this is why I had them read Deuteronomy this morning. So it's an echo from the Levite priests. Lord, you alone are my inheritance, my cup of blessing. You guard all that is mine. The land you have given me is a pleasant land. What a wonderful inheritance. So this is an echo from the Levite priests, which is the family group that was instructed to watch over the temple of where they were worshiping God. So they did not get to possess any property. They were fully reliant on the other family members and on what God would give them day to day. The Lord challenged his Israelites to share all produce and security, and so invited them into a goodly heritage. An acceptance of goodly heritage moved beyond land, place, and temptation to grace and presence of God. A foundation of faithful optimism is a life lived in communion with God. All their wealth and enjoyment rests in God. Verse 7, I will bless the Lord who guides me. Even at night, my heart instructs me. Have you guys ever woken up in the middle of the night and you're like, why can't I fall back asleep? Those are the moments where I try to remember to be like, okay, maybe God has a message for me that I wouldn't have listened to during the day. Maybe he needs to tell me now. Even at night, the Lord instructs. And so this next section begins with a vow to bless the Lord, to publicly acknowledge the blessing. Blessings include counsel, instruction, stability of life, which prompts a single-minded loyalty. This also refers to the second commandment, no other gods. This links the heart, soul, body, as well as the being to God. God should be your source of joy and security. And if he isn't, then yeah, you probably will be discontent with anything else. That's probably because you are letting something else be the God in your heart instead. That's why you feel hollow or have to fake being happy. Verse 8, I know the Lord is always with me. I will not be shaken, for he is right beside me. So this starts where Peter quotes this in Pentecost, which is the Acts passage that they read earlier. In his speech, Peter directly quotes this passage, telling the crowds that David was referencing the future Messiah, and that death could not keep him in its grip. Nothing Jesus did was out of self-will. It was all in obedience to his Father's will. And then it says the right side. Notice we hear the right side of God or the right side a lot in Scripture. And the right side has a lot of meanings. Just in Psalms, it has meant power, honor, pleasure, favor, support. But here it speaks of the safety and security of being at the right hand. And these last verses are the benefits of joy and perseverance. We get benefits now and later. For those who have not truly committed to God, it's easy for them to focus on what this commitment costs them. It costs pleasures, popularity, anonymity, family relationships, life goals, career choices, financial priorities, and so on. David understood the costs and benefits because of what he had lived in his life so far. He declared trust in some sort of resurrection and afterlife, but at the same time, as we see in other Psalms, he was also still very confused about what death was and what that meant. But I don't blame him because Jesus wasn't on the scene yet, and Jesus made it super easy for us to understand that. Verse 9, no wonder my heart is glad and I rejoice. My body rests in safety. The Lord is right beside me. No wonder I can feel joy. No wonder my heart's glad. There's a lot happening around me, but when I remember that God is right beside me, there's an attitude shift that happens that we see in some Israelites, like Caleb and Joshua, but not everyone has it. So if you think about when that image of like giving Jesus the driver's seat, maybe a lukewarm Christian would kind of be like, do you see that happening? Like, what are you going to, like, you better do something, like nervous because God's not doing something when they think that should happen. But someone who is fully absorbed, like David was saying, absorbed in God, I can imagine them kind of like sitting back, be like, this is going to be fun. What you can do? And just sitting back and watching what he will do because they have that confidence that God will provide, that something, a way out will happen. So they're facing that future with confidence. Which one are you? Verse 10, for you will not leave my soul among the dead, or allow your Holy One to rot in the grave. So this is hope of preservation from premature death and hope beyond. And there's a contrast here about life and death, or life with God, or life without God. So it removes that focus of life or death and focuses back on our relationship with God. Do we have God or do we not have God? So if you're not living with God, then you're dead. No wonder you don't feel joy. No wonder you don't feel safe. Now, especially since today is a secular holiday about hell, something I've found interesting in studying this mention of Sheol, which is the Hebrew word for death, or hell, it's less about a geographical location, and it's more this like indefinite and imprecise idea. And in the New Testament, all of that changes because Christ brought life and immortality to light through the gospel. So when David says dead, he prophesizes that he knows God will not allow him to remain in a suffering state. And the part about the Holy One to rot in the grave, when Jesus rose, his lifeless body was kept from corruption for 3 days and 3 nights. And David was speaking to this. Then we get to my favorite verse, verse 11. You will show me the way of life, granting me the joy of your presence and the pleasures of living with you forever. Now notice, he doesn't say you can show me the way of life. It says you will. Again, that confidence is coming out. And it's this settled joy. Our joy now is the presence of God. It's not what God can give us, it's just being with God. That's the joy. One translation actually says abundant joy. This path leads to heaven, and that's the one I want to be on. There is power in the resurrection event, and it provides us with a clearer hope that death is no longer an enemy to be feared. Some of you know that I'm doing a practicum for my master's at Illinois Cancer Care in Peoria. And all of my clients are walking with death. They have been wrestling with the fear of death. Some win, some don't, and boy, are some fighting for it. Some for over 20 years. But some do not fear the death sentence they were given last week because they have this clearer hope that David talks about. They're confident about that hope. And I want to live a life that committed to hope. It's a lot more peaceful, I'm told. And I think they found a secret to life there. So this started out with a secret. Do you want to know the secret? The precious secret is that God is your ultimate source of joy and safety. God is our goodly golden heritage. If you're looking for anything else, you'll find a cheap version that maybe at first looks like the real thing, but it's just not. And you will feel empty again, and you may even feel a little bit of shame because you didn't just go to the real thing in the first place. But that doesn't matter. Jesus just wants you to come home. So drop the shame and the guilt and fear at your cross, and Jesus wants you home. Maybe tomorrow, but also maybe next year or 20 or 40 or 100 years from now. Maybe you'll live 100 years, I don't know. But sometime you will be called home, just like we all will. So will you choose your loyalty to God today? Will you choose it tomorrow? And every day be heart ready to go home. Are you ready to inherit the heritage promised to you? Because the person already died so you could inherit it. He's waiting on you and your heart to be that loyal to him, to be faithful to him. Let's pray. Lord, out of all the things we're waiting on, we don't have to wait for benefits of the heritage that you adopted us into. It's not a secret anymore. You ask us to be with you, that we would desire to be with you, that we would follow the rules you gave us in order to stay close to you. Anything good in this world is from you. Help us to look for it and to share it with others. You are the only Savior we will ever need. Help us to fight fear with the confidence of you. Help us to drown out the noise and the lies the world surrounds us with. Help us surround ourselves with people who know and love you. Thank you for saving us from a horrific death to live forever with you. Help us to remember this and to remember you in all we say, in all we do, and all we share this week and always. Amen.